Welcome to Let's Talk Midlife Crisis. I'm Ashley.
And I'm Tracy. And today we have Mike Dwyer with us. Welcome, Mike.
Welcome. Thanks so much.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell our listeners a little bit about Mike Dwyer.
Well, I'm an over 65, but I'm still full-time working. I have a day job, which is a really nice consultancy, and I have a side gig, a passion project, which is called Implana Career. And the more I do this stuff, the more I think they reinforce each other. So in the day job, I do serious things, right? I'm ex-Ernst & Young, Deloitte Consulting, all this sort of thing, master's degree in management. So by day, I really never left the workforce, still going 100 miles an hour. So cybersecurity, cloud computing, RFPs, proposals, all this kind of world.
Wow.
So then, well, thanks. But the real purpose of that is when I sit down with somebody, I want to be able to say, hey, I see your skills and I see you in the workforce. And that's the reason to do these two companion projects.
I love that. Yeah, it seems now in the workforce that, we all kind of feel like a number. And like you said, they don't see you and your personal skills.
It is awful. How about, let's spend 10 seconds on how awful it is.
Okay.
And then we'll talk about all the cool stuff we can do.
Yes.
All right. So first of all, I have a slide somewhere that has 30 headlines from August and September. Wall Street Journal, The Economist, mainstream stuff. And basically, one of them, Economist says, you're screwed, new graduate. How's that for a mainstream publication? Wall Street Journal says it's job hugging, not job hopping. It takes longer to get hired. All the doom and gloom. So, you got that as a backdrop. I've been talking with people around me and on some podcasts. We all know that the bots seem to be trained to discard our cover letters and resumes. Mm-hmm. The latest phenomenon I'm seeing in the business press, if you want to really go insane, is employers complaining about candidates using AI to embellish. So we have a complete fabricated life cycle here. Mm-hmm. And some of the stuff is weird. What you're going to do is put that in a white font that a human reader can't see, but that a bot does. And so on and so on. So that's the nonsense.
Wow.
That's what we're up against. And so, Steve Dubin introduced us, and he's really picked up on the theme of kind of fighting back. What can I do? And so maybe now let's hear from Tracy and Ashley, and otherwise maybe we can start walking down our little bit the light plan we have in our conversation. Anything from you folks?
Right. Wow. No, I think that what you just said was spot on, at least as far as what's in my universe.
Yeah, and I think too, years ago, and maybe it's just, the nature of being younger and, your priorities are a little different, your fears are different. But it seemed like you felt so solid in your job and your performance and the growth that you saw ahead of you. And I just kind of feel, personally, and I see it Tracy and I have had conversations about it. And I think a lot of people are nervous, especially Tracy's friend and daughter. Any day now, you could just be cut. You're just a number. You could be cut. Yeah. And I think we've all lost that sense of, security and confidence too.
Yeah.
You are absolutely right. One of the things, since I spend every free moment when I'm not doing mainstream consulting work and the day job, one of the things a lot of the younger folks are doing are they call it income stacking. That's a formalization of the fear you just described, Ashley. Basically, what that strategy says, it's actually more of a tactic, I guess, that says, I am not going to be so reliant on any one thing.
Yeah.
And so, I think so now I want to touch on some of these big words that we touched on as we started the call. So let's talk about intentionality. Because when you're presented with all this, how do you not despair? And how do you make sure you're doing things that are effective? So I think you need to grab yourself a notebook, a OneNote, whatever your tool is, Google Suite, whatever you got, pen and paper, journal, I don't care. Color, pencils and crayons if you want. But you really do want to be intentional about, okay, what do I have? Where have I come from? I very much advocate, and I'm a very disciplined person, so sometimes my advice, you can see somebody saying, can we talk about that a little? Because I'm so disciplined, to me, I want to make sure people don't go down rabbit holes any which way. So I think the way you begin this intentionality, and I want to turn this back over to you two, because you have so much to say so far. I don't want to miss out on it. So the first part of the intentionality, and there's a couple other parts, but the first one is to harvest your past. Look through those old email project files, and what you're looking for are people, places, companies, things you've done. In a couple of the podcasts I've mentioned event planning, or you could look through your whole career and realize, geez, you know what? I actually am a great facilitator. I never thought of that as a separate thing. But so let me hear from you, please. How's that striking you?
I think it's actually genius, because I feel personally that I kind of just get in the grind. And I don't really think about those things. And when I start to get frustrated about, if I lost an account, or, anything that, might shift my business, whether it's good or bad, I'm just like going through the motions, and I'm not really thinking about what I can bring to this to make it feel more stable, or, you know what I mean?
I do. And what happens is every time we force ourselves to step back and look at, well, wait a minute. One way to do it is to say, is this really that different than 2 years ago or 5 years ago? I mean, we'll touch on another important word in a moment, which is collaborative.
Yeah.
But I love what you said back. And I think that's the challenge for us, in that answering the day-to-day and keeping up or freaking out because I don't have income. It takes some discipline, but I think the reason you want to follow this kind of a model is to say, well, okay, let me think about what I could do it for a finite amount of time, and then evaluate what I found. And I think that creates some momentum and some peace. So Tracy, though, we haven't heard from you on this one.
Right. As far as intentional, I think with me, especially with my career, it's actually, I feel like although I have one job title, I wear so many hats. So I could definitely see how that would benefit me by pulling it apart, and, maybe even creating a different pie chart of, all of the things that encompass the position that I currently do, as far as, client facing, right? There's, and putting together presentations, there's also, and the research, just all the different facets. I could definitely see how that would be valuable and how that could come into play, not only in everyone's lives, but mine. Yeah.
I am in love with this conversation. All right. Exactly right. Whether following Ashley's lead that, okay, this is a mental discipline. It's a psychological balance. Yes. Wow, wait a minute, says Tracy. When I look at this, I can see in the first 3 minutes, there's different elements of this. And so one of the things about this stressed out job market is sometimes one of the ways I put it to people is, you might think of your job as a molecule, but you might need to go find the atom. And I explained to you how whenever I have time, all this free time, I'm always working on the thought where one of my latest things is to go through the entire skills taxonomy on Fiverr, which is a freelance platform, if you're familiar with it. There are 750 service offerings. They don't just sell like graphics, creative like this. There are full-on pages.
Yeah.
So if you match the exercise you just described, Tracy, and by the way, I often mention to people, make a pie chart of your skills, of your time breakdown. You do some of that, and then segue to what's out there in these platforms and the like. You might just get a little something going.
There you go. There you go. And we're familiar with Fiverr. We've used it before for different individuals helping out with our show, as a matter of fact. So, yeah.
Oh, we are on the same page. Another fun thing about as I explore this freelance demographic, and I'm not saying being a freelancer is the only outcome. Right. I'm just saying it's intriguing me at the moment, and it's a good one. Turns out, I was on a show recently that's beamed at boomers. Sorry for the alliteration.
Okay.
And it turns out that in Upwork, 9% are boomers. Now, that's not a majority, but that's a long way from lonely, and you should not hesitate, is my point.
Got it.
How are we doing? You want to move on to collaborative?
Let's move on to collaborative.
Okay. So, I think both of you have been around enough. Do you remember when Marlboro cigarettes had an ad for them and the Marlboro man solo on his horse, ever strong? That is not the way.
Sam Elliott. Wasn't it Sam Elliott?
Or somebody who looked a heck of a lot like him.
Okay. Yeah.
Exactly right. Exactly. Well, one of the things that I did a few years ago is I actually commissioned a nice little marketing firm in Boston. I was just curious. I asked them to do a marketing strategy on career advice giving. Mm-hmm. And among that, they did some informal focus groups. And here's a finding that leads me to stress collaborative. Okay. So they came back and said, we did a couple of these focus groups. And what we found is that we kind of led the witness a little bit. If you want to get in shape, you know how everyone joins the gym in January 1st? Everybody figures if I need to get in shape, I'm going to hire a trainer. I'm serious. But if I'm going to look at career and job, I should do that on my own. I could not disagree more. It's got to be collaborative. And so I ask people, sometimes in the business press, you'll see this concept of personal board. I want to brainstorm with you or anyone else for as long as the coffee stays hot on what your personal board looks like. How are you going to convene them? How frequently are you going to mix? Are you going to get somebody who's a sector heavy? Are you going to get somebody who knows you? I hope. But so I think we're on a good roll so far. So let's take that collaborative concept and ask to hear from the hosts here now.
Okay.
I have my own business. It's very small, and there's a lot of other business owners that do the same thing I do. We're in sales. We work with big retailers and sell products into the retailers. And we're kind of a dying breed in the industry. We don't have a lot of the services that we can offer, our clients that some of the bigger brokerages have. And it's just the relationships the dynamics changed so much between buyers and salesmen and things like that. So we call ourselves a dying breed and quite literally are. I purchased the company that I own now, and I recently purchased another one, and these are men that decided to retire. But one thing that's really, I used to work for a very big broker, so it's the same job, but very different perspective. And it's really cool because all of us in the dying breed we're kind of a community. Even though we're kind of competitors, we're kind of a community, and we stay in touch with each other, and we check in on each other, and discuss maybe issues we're having with an account or a buyer, or looking for new clients. And that to me was so eye-opening when I came to my own business, leaving that big company, because I had coworkers and I was kind of a number in this huge company, and now it's just really, like I said, we're competitors, but we're also looking out for each other, and we're collaborating, and it's really cool. And it's been, like I said, very eye-opening and beneficial for me personally and for my career.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. And Tracy, I know you're going to have something good. Go ahead.
Well, also to Ashley's point, I just wanted to say while she was talking, what was going through my mind are when she was saying dying breed and all of that, I think that relationships between you and your customer is what is also dying, right? I think that relationships in industries, of all industries, because Ashley and I are in totally separate industries. I'm in advertising and marketing, been doing that for 30 some years. The last 5 years I have been working remote. Since then, and of course it was since COVID, but then since then I have changed agencies. So the difference between my work now and my work pre-COVID, and being in a brick and mortar, I'm 100% remote, love it, love it, love it. The only thing that I don't like about it, although there is collaboration, it's not nearly the same as what it used to be. When I was in a brick and mortar and we would all go into the conference room, all departments, I'm media, but we would get media, creative, account service, everybody in, and we would just brainstorm and we would take a good idea and make it great. I don't feel like those things are happening anymore. And I also feel in the world of media, as we all know, the evolution, how it's evolving is immense, right? And it's so fragmented. But for me, and why I mentioned that about Ashley is about relationships, is because it used to be all about relationships in media, right? And who you knew and how well you could negotiate a deal, or, added value things, elements, and making a small package, taking a small package and negotiating and making it big, right? As well with wrapping in collaborative efforts from teams at my office. But those things kind of have gone by the wayside in the last 5 years specifically.
Well, let's combine. Let's combine those two words now. And we're going to segue your experience and what you both just described onto the career lens. So I got to check with my friend, because I've told this story a couple of times. I know a nurse in the Boston area, and she's, why would a nurse in the Boston area need help with career or job? Well, as her husband put it to me, she's a little bit shy. So let me give you an example of something I did one Sunday after church that might be the best thing I've ever done in business. Okay? What I did is I got a physician, an RN with an MBA, a home healthcare executive, a home healthcare entrepreneur, and a traumatic brain injury executive. And the five of us sat down with the nurse and her husband. So now we're going to weave in what you two just said. So Ashley's describing really the power of collaboration. And Tracy's saying, boy, some of that's drying up. Well, what I'm putting in front of you is that with that intentional work, if you convene that group, imagine that, I'll tell you what, it was an absolute blast. And so once I did the first one on instinct, but now I'm always hoping to advise, help, convene, because it is such a powerful model. Someone I work with at my co-working space, which is a wonderful venue, very lively, by the way, was listening to this, and they wanted to make sure I understood. And I love when people get strong about something. She said, yeah, and one of those people on your personal board might not even know what you do for a living, but they know you. And the implication is that person would be in a position to tell you, Tracy, that's a little too timid. You can do more. Or, Ashley, I think you could get there, but that's a big one for you. And I think we need that kind of feedback. So, my little nerd brain, what I'm saying is we're connecting these words now. Now we're going to be intentional about our collaboration.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts before we leave that, please? Because I like how this is going and it's so much fun.
It is fun.
It is fun.
No, I think it's great. I'm ready to move on to the third one.
Yes.
All right. Realistic. Now, realistic is the next one in line because, maybe if you're dying to write the novel and years are going by and it's not happening, maybe you better just do the dog walking business and decide that I'm not buying a bigger house or a new car. There's no right answer. But realism suggests that whatever you want to do, whether you want to start a new venture, whether you want to get a freelance going, whether you want to change within your career, one of the things that I help people do, and this is something I've been in and out of for decades, one of the things that's interesting is when you really know a field or sector, how do I become a consultant at it? Because they're not the same thing. So the realism I'm saying comes from intentional research, collaborative feedback. See how I'm hoping to build on this?
Yeah.
That because we don't want to stretch them. I'll tell you what we don't want to do. Don't go borrow as much money as the bank or the relative will give you. Rent the shop and then find out that there's more L than P, if you know what I mean, in the profit and loss. Look at this stuff and be realistic and get some help on the business plan. Hey, you know me good. One of the things I really want to know from people, do you remember, is this too dated to talk about the high school yearbook editor, the person who's everybody's clustered around? Is that still a valid picture?
It is.
I think so.
For me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. That person would be miserable if you told them to do Excel in a back room for 10 hours a day.
Right.
Conversely, I know people who really listen, and then they finally say, go away, come back tomorrow, and I'll have you great options. And so part of the realism is knowing your own biorhythms, strengths, weaknesses. Now, you can change, but you want to be very realistic about that. Us humans, we don't always do that as smoothly as we might like. So you've been so kind to follow this model. So one of the things I'll give you, I'm going to seed the conversation now. I'm going to give you an example of realism and where, I felt like I had to push back at someone.
Okay.
The things you described earlier, Tracy, about the economy and the layoffs and stuff, no one's immune.
Right.
Law schools are laying off professors.
Yeah.
I mean, that, you say to yourself, wait a minute, I did everything right. And so I know someone who was laid off who was really high-end, PhD, had been a professor for decades, was a fellow in their professional society, and got laid off. And this person was not realistic, and I had to help them. And so what the pushback was is I start describing personal boards. Where can I go to meetups to learn what's happening? Where can I dig in? And what she played back to me was, I know what you mean. Every Monday morning, I get together with a bunch of unemployed women, and we have coffee. That's not what I'm saying. That's great. Keep having those coffee sessions. But that is not a personal board, an array of input, direction giving. And so this is a good example of needing to be realistic. So since we want to be telling real stories here, have either of you seen one of these scenarios where you've had to help somebody be realistic in their job or career work?
I've personally experienced it.
Yes.
Please.
So as I mentioned, I own a company. Yeah, so I'm running this company by myself, and I've always had an interest in going into real estate. And I mean like selling real estate. And Tracy knows this. For years, I've been saying, I'm going to get my license. And every time I would start the course, my job would get busy. And so I'm paying hundreds of dollars to take this course and never completing it. I paid for it 3 times. And I finally, at some point I was actually getting really hard on myself about it. But I wasn't being realistic. I wasn't. I'm not in a place where I could make a commitment like that. And I had to really sit down with myself and have that conversation. It was not realistic for me. And for several years, I was hard on myself. I was spending all this money and just not able to complete it. And in my mind, I can do this. But realistically, I just couldn't. And I finally had to have that conversation with myself.
Well, I appreciate that's such a deep share, but I think I'm seriously, I think the story I told you about a very high, almost a prestigious background. None of us are immune to the reality.
Right.
Right.
How about you, Tracy? Anything you want to add to this?
Yeah, the funny thing is about me, Mike, that you don't know is I am a dreamer. So reality in itself, although it exists, I love to live my life with my rosy colored glasses on. You know, if I want something, think about something, I shoot for the stars. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But what I tell my children and my grandchildren is dream big, because sometimes dreams do come true, right? So, but the reality is most of them don't come true, and that's okay. But you got to dream big.
Well, let's really pick that up, because when I imagine a personal board, I don't know you well enough to make a suggestion, but I certainly wouldn't take that wonderful enthusiasm and stock your board with a naysayer.
Right.
Instead, what I'd say is, well, just make sure there's somebody in the picture that can help you think it through.
Exactly.
Okay?
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Okay, and now I think we're starting to get insights. You see, I really did think about this, and I hope each word is shedding more light on the previous one and building.
Yes.
So when you look back now at this collaboration, who can help you be realistic, but not dissuade you from doing what you need or want to do?
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
So this becomes a very important art. One of the things, I got gray hair and I've been around the block, so sometimes you can just use experience and technique. A lot of times in business, when someone comes up with something, I'm saying, okay, we're calling that a pilot.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to go spend enormous amount of money, bet the farm, do a giant ad campaign, and then find out it wasn't as well baked as I kind of was worried about. But if you think about things in terms of a little trial and error or a pilot, and say, okay, Tracy, I got you nodding. We won. So that mythical board member on Tracy's board needs to be the one who says, well, don't forget or think about this, not don't do it or don't dream.
Yeah. Well, luckily I have a lot of people that keep me grounded. I surround myself with people that do keep me grounded, but it doesn't stop me from being the dreamer that I am. So.
Yeah, and I think it's important that we not try and rewire.
Right.
I actually have touched on this example, even though it was many years ago. If somebody tells you, I want to be the head of sales for a Fortune 500 company, but they're looking at their shoes and can't make eye contact when they're doing it, your answer needs to be, that's possible, but we got a long journey here.
Right.
And that's really what the point is, that if you want something that's very different than you are, then you're going to need more help. Let's just leave it at that. Anything else on this realism? We don't want to get down. We want to be. I'm still and grounded.
Yeah,
That's good.
Yeah. Yeah. Nope. I think we're good.
All right. Now let's get nimble. Mm-hmm. Right, and I hope you can see why the idea is okay. We've done some investments here. We've looked through our past. We got some sense of what intrigues and excites us, and now so the person who introduced us, Steve Dubin, he and I actually have built a course that's approved by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and he and I have delivered it one in Rhode Island, in Massachusetts, and this, of anything you can do, talking to people about networking, when the tech guy reveals that he finally and honestly thinks that that's just self-promotion and bullshit. No. Networking is when your curiosity outweighs your shyness.
Yeah.
And talk about intentional. You really want to get there, and when Steve Dubin and I do this, he's really good. I mean, I'm Deloitte, Ernst & Young. I get slides, graphics. He pulls out some notes from his pocket. but he's run professional networking groups, and he knows what he's doing too. And we have great conversations. So he'll tell you to kind of ease into it, that it's possible for anybody, that there's techniques that you can do that will make it, like he'll say, if you go to a big event and someone is starting to, kind of capture you in the corner, tell them that you told yourself you're going to see 10 people tonight. Thanks so much for being the third. Great, easy, move on.
Yeah.
One of the things, I actually have a table or a chart somewhere that says, both of you would have no trouble in a networking scenario. I can see that in a minute. Whether you're extroverts by nature or have just trained yourself, you're good to go. But what about our less confident colleagues?
Right.
Well, so I got this little chart, and on the left side is scripted environments. So let's say I'm interested in whatever the hell it is, blockchain, new kinds of digital marketing. Go somewhere where there's a lecture and a Q&A afterwards. Because that's safe, right? You don't have to navigate. You don't have to have an elevator pitch. And the lecture gives you stuff to talk about in the Q&A. So I really want to compliment what Dubin does by talking, because he's run professional, actual commercial networks and stuff. So, we got great perspectives together. Now, as you move up the food chain, you say to yourself, well, wait a minute now. I got a couple of those under my belt to start to get to kind of the intermediate level of cruising this whole thing and the like. One of the things I have been working on lately is, it's not a fancy term, but I haven't heard it before. It's called topical networking. So if you want to learn something, you could take a course on LinkedIn. But if you can go to a meetup with human beings, and Steve Dubin finished my sentence, he said, you should drive 50 miles for that. Yes. If you can get to something where, it's something I'm genuinely interested in. And when you're genuinely interested in, you can't miss, because you can start off with a very small ask. You don't show up and say, get me a job. You show up to the group that's doing digital marketing or whatever it is and say, you know what, I think I'm interested in this. What should I be learning? What's emerging? That's a flattering and easy response. So I hope I'm leading you through some work that says, hey, here's kind of the introductory 101 college course version of it, and I'm kind of moving up the food chain. And then you graduate to the free-for-all, where it's 800 people at the Chamber of Commerce, or I work at a co-working space, and I'm in Boston. The original one is in Kendall Square, Cambridge, near MIT. And they have something every Thursday afternoon called Venture Cafe. That is caffeinated. There are 300 people, service providers. Wow. So if you have that shy cousin, that's not the place. You don't push them into that room and say good luck. So Let me stop for a minute now. And now we're working on Nimble. We're going to do some more. We're going to talk about freelance. We're going to talk about this. But let's talk about getting you out there. And there's some different settings, some networking. So what do you see?
Well, it's been a while.
Whatever.
It's been a while for me as far as networking is concerned. I think I've been in probably since COVID, right? I think is when I really stopped participating in any networking related activities. So it's a little difficult for me. And honestly, I think that's one of the reasons that we created this podcast, right? Was to create a community of like-minded individuals who perhaps didn't have best friends to talk to about things that are happening to them in their lives, midlife and beyond, right? That encompasses so much, as we now have realized since creating this podcast. But basically, I think that would be a part of our creation here in Let's Talk Midlife Crisis podcast. Yeah,
absolutely.
That sounds perfect. Yeah, agreed. I mean, you went and built your own. That's. How about you, Ashley? Anything to add?
Seriously, I mean, to Tracy's point, this is crazy. I used to spend several weeks on the road traveling for meetings, and that stopped in 2020. It just stopped. and I had to get used to being home so often. And when I wasn't traveling for work, I was traveling. My youngest was at the time on a travel soccer team, so I wasn't even home on the weekends. And then all of a sudden I was home all the time, and that was a big adjustment for me. I think the toughest thing was moving to virtual meetings, and we haven't gone back. Yeah. So for 5 years now, everything is on the computer. Virtual. And I don't, and to, what we talked about earlier, the relationship, I don't get to have those relationships with my buyers that I did when I met with them in person. I could take them to lunch or to dinner or just leaving the conference room, walking down the hall. How's your family doing? I don't get those moments anymore. I don't get to have that connection. And I work from home and I work alone. And yes, I interact with people, electronically, but I don't have coworkers that I can visit with or go to lunch with, or, so it's been very interesting. I actually just had my first in-person meeting though, a couple of weeks ago, and I cannot tell you the joy it brought to me. It felt so good. And I thought, I got to do this. I got to find something that gets me out of the house and I'm interacting. I just could not believe how good it felt to go to an office and present and in person, and have those little small conversations on the side, that are more personable. It was amazing. Yeah. And it's really sad that that's gone away. But I think we have to, I got into a rut, and I think we have to push ourselves maybe out of our comfort zone, because now I'm in my comfort zone and I don't want to seek those things to get me out there because I'm comfortable.
I was going to say, do you want that on a day? Although it felt really great, you don't really want that on a day-to-day basis anymore.
I want to work in an office every day. I like my flexibility.
Yeah, but this is a good thing. And first of all, when I work with anyone, it's not about judgmental. It's not about you must. It's exploring. And I think when we come to this, obviously you two are doing a massive networking activity. But and so 3 cheers for you. One of the things, again, where Steve Dubin and I have a great contrast, he's always exhorting people to do all this networking, lots of activity per week and all this. Mike says, hey, 6 a year for 2 years is a different outcome. And I put together a shopping list. One of the things I did is I just really got on my, kind of consultant's hat. And so I've literally got categories of networking. And I suggest to people that they put together a little budget, a little career budget that says, hey, even if I only do one every month or so, if I go to something where I learn some technology or digital marketing or whatever the heck it is, that's great. But another thing too is, we both live in relatively progressive parts of the country. But one of the things I have no trouble saying, I have enough friends from different backgrounds and demographics. If you're a young, gay, black accountant and you're working in mainstream business, you've got some navigation to do. And so I think you're going to need to do some identity networking, some hey, how do we go about this? How can I turn to colleagues? 50 years old, you feeling like you're not keeping up in the tech? No problem. Start up some lab networking. So what's that? Yeah. Well, what if you two came to me and said, there's one little thing we're scared of. We haven't done like Slack or Teams or something. Should I read something or that? You know what I'd say to you two? Nope. Download a copy and organize a birthday party, a golf tournament, or whatever the hell else you try it. And I feel confident in encouraging people, and I can show them how to do it. So part of this nimbleness is to array and make a lot of categories in this networking category that says, hey, I might need some of this, I might need some of that. Right. And, when you got somebody who's going to a meetup, one of the things that's an absolute hoot these days is drones and additive printing, 3D printing. Right. You don't think about them anymore. But you know what? They're not oddities. They are mainstream. And you can make a living doing that stuff. Yeah. And so if you're feeling beat up and you're in some kind of a job that's just, oh my God, at least I got income. One of the things you can do is explore something that would be a complete new adventure. And in today's world, you can do stuff for pretty short money. So again, at least I got to a couple of nods. Let's try our little hear from Tracy and Ashley, or Ashley and Tracy model here for a minute, please.
Okay. No, well, my son actually owns his own company, and to your network conversation, he actually is in a physical networking group, and he goes every week, and he has to pay to be in it. But then there's also something about that you have to utilize each other's services XYZ amount. And so that's pretty interesting. He loves it. Through his eyes, I can definitely see the benefit of that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's actually interesting because when we were chatting before and you brought these words up, I wasn't really sure how that was going to play out. But no, it's amazing.
It is. How that comes up.
Thank you. You have been the absolute best. I was hoping, just listening to your prior podcasts and seeing how naturally you flowed around, I wanted to make sure this was in no way a lecture. That's not what we wanted to do.
No.
Oh,
Well, thank you. Do you know what? I have a Mike Dwyerism. This is something I completely made up about meetings, and I think it's going to apply now. Here's my.
Okay.
Why are meetings like microwave popcorn?
I don't know.
Because at first it goes pop, 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 then it starts getting a little quiet, and then you burn it.
Oh.
And so the art is to say, you know what? There might be a few unpopped kernels, but I feel like we got through everything. Everybody's still smiling. Maybe it's time to turn off the microwave, you know?
You're so bad.
So,
No, it's perfect. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
well, thank you. And I picked up from your past things just how much you're trying to encourage and develop and help people. So 3 cheers. Thanks for having me.
Great.
Well, that wraps it up for today. Thanks for joining us on Let's Talk Midlife Crisis. We hope you got some laughs, a little inspiration, and maybe a few new ideas.
If you loved today's episode, hit that subscribe button so you'll never miss an episode. And hey, share the love. Send this episode to a friend who could use a good laugh and some midlife wisdom.
Connect with us on social media at Let's Talk Midlife Crisis and let us know what's on your mind. We love hearing from you.